Hello and welcome to Bulimia Sucks. I'm your host, Kate Hudson Hall, and thank you so much for listening. Now, this is a platform for people to share relatable and uplifting and inspiring conversations based on an eating disorder. And episodes will include talking with professionals who work with people with an eating disorder, who may have had their own struggles with anorexia or bulimia or another type of an eating disorder, and also to people who are actually struggling right now with an eating disorder, sharing their personal stories of their difficult journeys and their steps taken into their recovery. So as a therapist, I have created a free Bulimia Sucks course to help you get started on your recovery pathway. So if you go to my website, katehudson-hall.com, on the homepage, there is a sign-up form and a link for you to dive in and check it out. And another area I've been working on is my coloring books. So I have made 4 different coloring books. One is for bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, and anxiety stress relieving. So they are coloring books with mandala on one side with an inspiring quote over the top for you to color with a beautiful mandala. And then on the opposite page is a question or two about that quote, about how that can help you to tune in and help you to move forward in your recovery path. So if you would like to check those out, if you go to Amazon and put my name in, then you will be able to find them. Now I am super excited. Our guest today is Stephanie Lora Bearce, and she is an anxiety and empowerment coach and also a speaker for female entrepreneurs looking to make a big impact on the world. Tired of living in the anxiety-ridden cage of the good girl, she has made it her life's mission to help women everywhere discover their inner truth, heal deeply and profoundly, and live a powerful life out loud as their most authentic selves. I love that. And Stephanie overcame her own struggles with bulimia during college. And in the following years since, she's become a licensed mental health counselor, turned nutritional health coach, turned empowerment coach, and intuitive energy healer. And her story is very much a part of her motivation for the work that she does with women right now. And she is here today to share her story. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I think that was the most amazing intro I've ever received. So thank you.
I don't believe that, but thank you so much. I'll take that. Thank you. So thank you for joining us. So this is excellent. I'm very excited to hear your journey and wow, and how far you have come and your incredible work that you do now. So tell us, so your eating disorder, so your bulimia, it started when you were in college?
Yes, it did. Probably a little bit towards the end of high school. And then when I went away to college, I stayed in the same state. So I didn't go too far, but I was far enough away from my family to create a little bit of distance. And I call myself a recovering control freak. Because my whole life growing up, into high school, into college especially, and it just sort of escalated with every year that went by, was this like deep-seated perfectionism.
Yes, I think many of us have that, a strain of that.
Yes, and it does. It is a strain, and it weighs on you so heavily. And the more demanding that things became in my life, with education, with living on my own, with working in school full time, and the more pressure that I felt, the more that desperate need for control came around. But unfortunately, when we start to want to control more things, it often seems that so much is outside of our control at the same time. You know, things are happening, anxiety's mounting. I didn't even really realize that it was anxiety at the time that I was experiencing. And things started crashing and burning a little bit.
Yeah, because it's such a difficult pathway because of the pressure that you put on yourself. And when you can't achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, then all those negative thoughts come in, and then you
Oh,
start to drive yourself
yes. Yes. And that's
into
what it was, driving myself into the ground.
into a dark corner. Yeah.
And so the anxiety started. I had these panic attacks that were starting that I didn't understand. It was really debilitating, and my grades started to slip. And at the time, you know, you mentioned in my bio, I talk about that, the cage of the good girl. I was very, very much a product of a society and an understanding about what a quote unquote good girl was supposed to look like, you know, that family first and education, and make sure that I was checking all of those boxes and
Mm.
getting good grades, and, you know, figure out what you want to do with your life. And I changed my major 5 times in college
Oh,
before
five times, did you?
ended up on the 5-year graduation track because of that. Um, it was the best possible thing that could have happened to me in the long run, but we'll get there. When I was figuring out what it was I wanted to do, these panic attacks were starting, everything was crashing and burning. I started grasping for whatever I could get in terms of control. And in the twisted little place in my brain, food became the one thing that I could control, because food made me happy. And so I would binge on these foods that brought a little bit of serotonin in the moment. The sweets that I craved, the yummy things, going out with my friends to Domino's at 3 a.m. But then, you know, it ended up turning very, very quickly into bulimia, unfortunately, because that was the, you know, the quote unquote control
Yes.
that I
Yeah.
thought that I had. You know, it was, oh, I can eat whatever I want, and I'll make myself happy, and then I can make sure that I don't gain weight on top of it, because good girls don't go to college and gain weight. And all of these just very, very twisted understandings of the world in my head that sort of morphed into what very, very quickly became a very big problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it was my sophomore year in college when all of this sort of came to a head, and I was so ashamed at the same time that then I'm hiding it from everyone.
Yeah.
And my friends, my family. I think no one knew. I feel like we always feel like we're kind of in our own little bubble with things, and I think people probably picked up on more than I thought they did.
Yeah. And we
Um,
want to be in that bubble because we feel so ashamed.
exactly. The way that we hide from things because it's hard to face them ourselves, but
Yeah.
then also we don't want anyone else able to peer in on the things that we're ashamed of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I hid everything, and my whole life became this very precarious balance of, it literally felt like walking on a knife's edge. You know, if I an inch in the wrong direction, and everything, I would fall and everything would come crumbling down. And that high level of anxiety and stress and performance, and you know, now the unhealthy eating and the bulimia that I had developed over the course of the few months in sophomore year when things got really bad, I kept telling myself, I got this. I got this. That was my,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I'm sure, and I know, you know, we all do at the time when
Yes.
we're trying to keep everything under control.
Yeah. We
And
think, oh, no, we'll deal with that tomorrow.
exactly, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Oh, yes.
And what it really feels like, someone described this to me once in a conversation, and it felt so accurate. It felt like when you're in a pool, you know, in a pool of water, and you're trying to sit on a beach ball that is constantly trying to rise up on either side underneath you because it's full of air and wants to get back up to the surface.
Yes.
And that precarious balancing of trying to keep that underneath you is exhausting.
Yeah.
And the only way that you're ever going to feel any better is to let that beach ball just pop up, and then deal with the repercussions of what all of that took you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And there's so much freedom in finally letting someone in and finally just letting go of that control, because we don't realize just how much I think the control and that, like, because it's like a death grip that we have, which is straining on the body, straining on the mind. You're constantly exhausted, constantly hyper alert. And so then we end up with weakened immune systems. We end up with, all of those other repercussions of consistent stress, the mood swings, the insomnia or too much sleep depending, depression can come in. There's so many other pieces that can start to become a problem here. And I had a lot of them at the time. There were every new thing, there was just sort of more and more and more that would become piled on. And it wasn't until I finally one day realized, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And God, sorry.
And what else helped you to realize at that particular point that, oh my gosh, I need to, change?
So at the time, I was just talking about the additional like mental health pieces that can come in, depression and the overwhelm and all of those things. I started to have very, very dark thoughts. I was not going in a healthy direction in my mind, and it started to scare me when I realized that these thoughts were coming unbidden about not wanting to be here anymore. Kind of everything in
Yeah.
that direction. And I finally told someone. So that was
Who did you tell? Was it a
uh,
friend or?
one of my friends in college.
Mm.
And I have been very, very blessed with wonderful friends throughout the course of my life. I would not be here without them. And I told one of my friends, I just kind of broke down and it happened. And she helped me to tell my parents, helped me to ultimately reach out and get myself in to see a therapist, which I'd never done at the time. Which is so ironic because now that's, I became a mental health therapist. But at the time, it was so overwhelming to think about going
Yes.
to talk to someone. And
Yes.
there's such a stigma.
Yeah.
There was even more before. It's still there nowadays, though, but a stigma attached to going to therapy. And, oh, you're one of those people that go.
Absolutely. And I remember that. And this was back in the, the early 1900s when I was kind of, I remember the very first port of call was my doctor sent me to see a psychiatrist. And back then, going to see a psychiatrist, oh my gosh, anyone that goes to see a psychiatrist in those days, to me, this is how I looked at it. They were ready to be,
Yep.
taken down that very dark path. And so I can totally relate to that because that was huge for me also.
Yeah. And it's another one of those things that becomes, okay, do I hide this? Do I, that whole hiding and shame piece. And I was very blessed. The college that I went to had an amazing counseling center right on campus. So I didn't have to go anywhere. All I had to do was walk across the lawn, and it looked like I was going to visit some friends who happened to live in the dorm that this center was a part of. That was so, so helpful to know that it kind of looked, I didn't have to tell anyone necessarily what I was doing because I wasn't ready right away. And I think that when you're first starting to go seek help, there's a lot of anxiety around, do I tell people what I'm doing? What do I say where someone asks me where I'm going after work? Or you don't owe anyone an explanation for anything. Your mental health, your physical health, whatever it is that you're working on is just your responsibility alone. And whether there is still that stigma or not, if you need to do something for yourself, it's like you get to kind of keep that to yourself if you desire to.
Yes.
And that, because I think there's also this, especially with social media nowadays, it was a little different 12, 13 years ago when I was going through all of this. But nowadays it's like everybody's posting what they're doing, who they're doing it with all the time. And there's this pressure to be kind of like posting in live time what you're doing with your life. And so anytime something comes up that's like, going to therapy, for example, people are like, well, I don't want anyone to know. And how am I going to explain when I'm not answering text messages or not? Like, no, you don't owe anyone an immediate response, for one.
Yeah.
And, and it's not about hiding it when you're ashamed, but more about choosing to share when it feels right for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have that choice.
Yeah.
Whether to tell anyone or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, and choosing to do so with the people that you feel safe with. So it took a long time before I was comfortable enough to find the people who I wanted to share what was happening with me with. And I remember back then thinking, I can never tell anyone ever that I struggled with bulimia, that it took me so long to come back from it, and that I, all of these things that we tell ourselves, right? And now here I am 12, 13 years later talking about it on a podcast. Like, things change and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can all change.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the thing, is life it's all about allowing yourself the space to change. And so that friend that finally held space for me, to help me tell my family, to help me go see a therapist, led me to the therapist that I had changed my life completely. She was so loving, so non-judgmental. I really, really lucked out in the therapist lottery when when I got her.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And she was really the reason that I didn't realize the connection between anxiety, self-loathing, and the problems that I was having. And she was really the first person to help me start that conversation of understanding that I had no love for myself whatsoever. And that was a big piece of what really led me down the road to my eating disorder, to all of these really dark and heavy places, because I hated myself. And it was so hard to face that, but to have someone very lovingly sort of guide me in that direction was the beginning of, put me on a whole new trajectory for the rest of my life. And I really credit, I wish I knew where she was in life now, but I really credit still being here to that amazing woman.
Yeah, I do as well. I spent 4 years with a therapist when I started to work through my bulimia. And then after, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, then my mother passed away all of a sudden. And I never had a father. So it was like, my mother and my father dying all at once. And I do believe when I came out the other side, I said, if I hadn't have been seeing her, I am 100% sure that I wouldn't be here today, because of that support and that kindness, that non-judgmental support that she gave me.
Yeah. And that's the non-judgment is so crucial, to know that you can go in and just be seen in however you're showing up and whatever's coming up for you, and just kind of be held in that, and I'm so happy that you found that as well. And I know, what popped into my head was, I know that some of the clients that I work with, because I became a licensed mental health therapist, but then actually changed into, now I do coaching and I work out of my home. For those of you on the video, you can see my little porch that I operate from. I changed to this because I feel like I had more freedom in the coaching in terms of being able to help in a different way.
Yes.
Which I was very excited about. But a lot of the women that came to me, whether it was, before in therapy or now in coaching, know that it's not always like a one size fits all. When you start going to see someone for help, no matter who it is, if it doesn't work, a therapist is a person. And if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel like a really good fit, do not be afraid to search out and find someone else.
Absolutely, because the person, you've got to feel completely comfortable with that therapist to be able to open up.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of people think if they go, it's like, okay, well, this is who I'm with, and I'm uncomfortable, and I can't leave because I'll, the people pleaser in me, when I ran into this
Mm,
at one point after I left college and had to continue on in my therapy journey. um, I got connected with someone that it just wasn't a good fit. She was a lovely person, but it wasn't right for what I needed. And I struggled with all of these, like, oh my gosh, am I going to hurt her feelings if I
yeah,
if I leave? Am I
yeah,
No, for anyone who's listening, I promise you it is more worth it for you to end the therapy or the coaching relationship, depending on what world you are coming into, and find what works for you. That was the
yeah,
other number one thing that I did, because I couldn't continue seeing that therapist from college afterwards. And so it took me a little while to find someone who felt like a right fit after that.
yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. And so now, so are you working with clients online as
yes.
well as face to face?
Yep. So I do both. Off to the side over here, I've got a little setup for clients who want to come to the house. But I do a lot over Zoom, which really allows for, I've been able to work with women in 7 different countries so far, including the United States, which is where I'm from, which has really been incredible. So, um, yeah, so virtual, in person, I really just try to meet people where they are. And I do specialize, like you said, in anxiety and empowerment, and understanding the repercussions that anxiety can have, all the way from, what seems like a more, and I put this in heavy quotes, like typical anxiety experience, because there isn't one, but
No.
there's sort of this idea that people come into and they say, well, anxiety looks like this, and I don't have that, so it must not be that. And it's like, nope, it's a little bit different for everybody. It gets to be
Oh yeah, absolutely.
experience.
So if Stephanie, if somebody had anxiety and they wanted some help with it, so how would you help them?
So in coaching with me, it's all about getting to know the person at first. I really like to understand what that experience looks like for them, what some of the symptoms and the triggers and things are. And what we do together is really actually kind of burrow down to the very root of where the anxiety trigger is coming from. And so a lot of times it comes from childhood, and those formative years where we kind of come up with those core beliefs, um, which is a whole hour-long conversation in itself
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that one
yeah.
thing. But kind of understanding and determining those core beliefs,
And
work.
understanding what your limiting negative beliefs are.
Yes, because the mindset piece is everything.
Yeah.
um, and understanding, starting off with that self-awareness and the self-talk, and really becoming aware of, and then transforming the thoughts that are going on inside of our head, because that's what really gives fuel to disordered thinking, and therefore the repercussions of that, or a healthy and loving way of coming home to ourselves, of coming at every situation. And so, yeah, so the thoughts, the mindset, um that sort of like the younger self heal, the inner child healing, if you will, about the things that really contributed from a young age, and then kind of everything that stemmed from that moving forward. So it's really a whole life holistic look at our beliefs, our experiences, the things we've gone through, and then making small changes. So I am all about baby steps, because
Taking those small steps.
yes, because what happens is, a lot of times we want to go, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be different. And I
Oh yes, wouldn't that be lovely? Mm.
exactly, I'm not going to be anxious, and I'm going to all of a sudden have this beautiful morning routine. And what happens is, when we try to change too much too quickly, we actually shock our nervous system,
Yeah.
and it can't sustain that. And so the baby steps of just starting with, choosing one thought that you're going to catch and replace with a new one. Starting to drink one more cup of water so you're a little more hydrated, one less cup of coffee so that you're not flooding your anxiety system with more caffeine, which, because there's a physical piece to all of this too.
So it's looking at when a client contacts you and you have that, those first 2-3 sessions, it's looking at the whole bigger picture about their lifestyle and how it's all intertwined and connected with their anxiety.
Yes, exactly, because nothing happens in a vacuum. So it's our relationships, it's your job, it's the thoughts, it's family, it's all of these things together that.
And those thoughts that you have, they bring up all those negative feelings. So it's like, oh yeah, there's somewhere another avenue that needs to be addressed.
Yes, exactly. Like it just kind of shows, and the more that you understand, the more that you'll be shown, me as the coach, but then also my clients as well, getting that clarity of, oh, that's why I do this thing, or, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now, why this is what I always go to when I'm feeling stressed, or, whatever the connection is there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. So, Stephanie, what would you say to somebody that's thinking about taking that first step onto their pathway of recovery, or they're either on that pathway, but they feeling maybe wobbly or not finding it really easy? What would you say to them?
That you are so deserving, so much more deserving than you even realize right now, of health and of love and of support, both from other people, and in building a support system for yourself, but most importantly from yourself. That self-love piece is at the core of being able to change so much. And so whatever you can do on this journey to lean a little bit more into choosing to love yourself through it, choosing to,
and thinking what would be that very first step towards that, maybe.
Yeah, what's again, in baby steps, what is the one baby step that you could take right now, that a small step towards giving yourself what it is that you need? Because that's what it is. It's making sure that your own needs are being met. And so often they're not. If you think about, for those of you who have studied psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? What's that pyramid?
Yeah.
And we all want to be up at the top, where we're, feeling amazing. We're rocking our inner bad bitch. We're, that higher thinking, meditating, or whatever it is that you really envision for yourself. But if you're not doing the foundational exercises, making sure that you are eating well, drinking water, getting enough sleep, those very foundational sort of care things to live, we're not going to be able to get further up in the pyramid. So where are you neglecting? And neglecting is the wrong word, because again, when we kind of noticing what words have negative connotations for you is going to be really important as you're thinking about self-talk. So neglect has a negative connotation. So
I'm going to be worded in the positive, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And so where are you desiring or needing something that you're not getting right now? And how can you give that to yourself in this moment is, really crucial along that, because we can't change everything overnight. And I think understanding in those first steps that it is going to be a little bit of a journey, but it's going to be worth it. And you will get there. You will get to recovery as long as you just keep committing to yourself over and over again.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. And Stephanie, were there any specific resources that helped you, or that you could recommend, or books, or?
I do love actually this whole bookcase behind me is majority like self-help personal development books. There's a couple that, aside from reaching out and building a support system, because that's the most important thing, is to make sure that you're not isolated, whether it's therapy, family, just kind of bringing people on who are going to be able to love and support you. A couple of my favorite, just like empowering self-love sort of book. The number one, my favorite, was You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So good. There's one I just bought, actually. It's called, I think it's in my bag here. Buy Yourself the Fucking Lilies. Sorry for the, but it's
What's it called? Buy yourself the fucking lily.
Fucking lilies.
That's a great title, isn't it? So
And
that's a good book, is it?
it is so good. And it's just, it's all about self-love and
Mm.
getting yourself the things that you, again, following those desires and really giving them to yourself when you need them. And I know, it's not necessarily anxiety or eating disorder specific, but it's at that core of learning how to love yourself deeper, which is a
Yes.
huge part of each of those journeys, you
Yes.
know? So those are my two favorites right now. And I
Oh, we
love that
have
I
to
have
check
that written.
those out.
And the author of the Lilies book is Tara Schuster, Schuster. So
Okay.
wanted to share that.
Yeah, lovely. And so how can people find you?
So I am on Facebook. My name is Stephanie Lora Bearce, as Kate introduced me, and that's my name on Facebook. It's the same thing on Instagram at Stephanie Lora Bearce. My website is uplevelingunapologetically.com, and that has all of the different ways to connect, all of the workshops happening, everything that goes on both virtually and in person. And I love to connect on social media and hear stories. If anything, I just love when people reach out. So anytime,
Yeah.
I'm always
Yeah.
available.
Oh, we need to check you out. And then we'll put all the links anyway in the details below so people can find you easily.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you
This
for
has
having
been,
me.
it's been invaluable, such invaluable information and guidance for people. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you giving me space to share my story and for having me on today. Thank you so much.
Yay! Thank you for joining us. So that's all for today's episode of Bulimia Sucks. And thank you to everybody for listening. And make sure that you come and join our Facebook group, Bulimia Sucks, if you haven't already, where it's great to connect with like-minded people and chat about our ups and downs. So check that out. And I look forward to speaking with you in the next episode.